My name is Holly Conrad Smith. I am one of the customer success managers here at Giraffe, and I'm very excited to present our Templates for Success webinar today. In this webinar, we're going to talk about why you should consider making your own custom templates, what's included in a template, how to set one up, and then how to distribute it to your team. So a couple of words of housekeeping before we dive in here. If you do have any questions during the webinar, feel free to drop those in the webinar chat. Our goal today is to wrap this up within 30 to 45 minutes. So if we have any time left at the end of the webinar, we can also do open Q&A. So if we have that time at the end, I'll stop recording and then you can raise your hand and ask any questions live, be it about templates or really anything else related to Giraffe. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, let's dive right in here. So today, of course, we're talking about templates. And I really love using templates in Giraffe for a lot of reasons. So the first being, for me, all about efficiency. I love how I can create a template that has all of my favorite settings and favorite layers and usages and just use it over and over again. So every time I start a new project in Giraffe, I can start it up with all of my assumptions with the click of a button. So that is definitely my number one reason for creating templates. Another reason to make your templates available to your team is to just distribute that organizational knowledge. So we all know in a company there's always that guy or that girl who knows everything. They've been there forever. They remember all of the prices of your building materials. They remember all of the local policies, and they just sort of have that in their head, and they are this great source of knowledge. What's really cool about using a template in Giraffe is you can take some of that knowledge out of their brain and make it easily accessible to others who are using the same platform. And then lastly, templates also help to unify your workflows. So you've got maybe multiple team members who all kind of do things a little bit differently, and that's always fine. But if there are key things that are really important to your business, like we need to track these metrics or make sure that these, costs are the same across the board, or this planning regulation is really important to us, saving that in a template helps everyone start from the same place, and really helps you to create that, consistent output at the end of your studies. So, now that hopefully I've convinced you that making a template is important, let's talk a little bit about what even is a template in Giraffe, right? So let's jump over to our Giraffe window. And hopefully in this webinar, everyone who's here is at least a little bit familiar with the Giraffe interface. If you're not already, after this call, definitely jump onto our YouTube channel and watch our Getting Started Giraffe Academy series. That'll take you through all of the basics of how to add layers and how to draw things and editing your usages and all of that. But today we're going to talk more specifically about using all of those, Giraffe basics to create your template project and really start getting efficient with your workflows. So when we're talking about a template in Giraffe, it's really just a special kind of a Giraffe project. And when we start creating templates, it's actually an identical workflow to creating just a normal project in Giraffe. And then all we do at the end is just nominate it as a template by basically ticking over a setting. So if you're familiar with making a project in Giraffe, making a template is super easy. The actual, clicks and manual way of doing it, very easy. The big thing with templates is the brain power and the thinking that goes into making sure that all of the data and assumptions and starting points are really reflective of what's important to your business. And isn't that always the way? Whenever we're setting up a new software or a new thing with our business, all of that initial brain power is really where the work lies, right? Typically, the software itself is not the most difficult part of that transformation. So, one important thing to remember when you're starting your giraffe projects, every giraffe project actually does have a template assigned. So if you've gone into Giraffe and you've clicked on new project, you've probably seen this screen pop up. If you are brand new to Giraffe, probably the only square you see here in this list is the one that says blank. And this blank template, I'm putting it in air quotes basically, because it's not actually blank. It contains a few basic data layers and your Giraffe default usages, and even some sort of default assumptions, all coming in with that air quotes blank template. So remember that when you're starting a project, it's always got some sort of assumptions applied. So what you probably really want to do is make sure that you have your assumptions applied. Don't let the software people tell you, what the cost of something should be. You want to be in control of that, and that's why we're creating a template together. So you see all of these other squares on my screen. These are templates that I've created, and this is what it will look like for you as well. As you start creating more templates in your workspace, and they either are owned by you or shared with you, you'll start to see those as options for when you start a new project. So you can have as many as you want in your workspace, which is really great if, for instance, you work in a lot of different regions or markets, or if you have a lot of different product types that have sort of, very specific differences that you want to account for. Having different templates for those kinds of things can be really helpful. Maybe you have one, team or office that likes to work in a specific way and they want some specific differences on their template. No worries, we can just do a save as on your normal company template and adjust those little things for them. And then they can have their own little special snowflake template. So really easy to keep all of your assumptions managed that way. So let's start with creating our first template. And all I'm going to do is actually start by creating a blank project. Really simple. I clicked that new project button and I'm just going to select blank. And like I mentioned, this is going to bring in all of the Giraffe defaults to this project. You can tell right now that this is not a saved project because of course it's yelling at me, draw a site boundary to save. And you can also probably see that it says Scratchpad in the URL. Anytime it says Scratchpad in the URL, that means you are in an unsaved area. So just watch out for that if you're doing some work and it says Scratchpad, or you have this giant blue button saying, hey, you need to save your project. Definitely make sure you do that, or you might lose your work if you lose internet connection or you leave the browser. Everything gets automatically saved in Giraffe once it's in a project, but when you're in Scratchpad, think of it as, your back of the napkin. You're doing some quick work and then it gets tossed when it gets refreshed. So the first thing we want to do is save this. What I love to do for templates is save the, like, you have to set a project area for any of your projects that you save in Giraffe. Giraffe is inherently spatial. But of course, a template might not really have a specific spot. Like, it doesn't have a parcel that's attached to that template, right? So a lot of times what I like to do is either save that template as like the city hall for the city that I'm working in, or maybe even my own office's address. If you're typically working in the region of where your office is located, that office address is a really easy one to just type in there and use. What I'm going to do today is create this template in Philadelphia, which is what we're looking at here. And Philly has a really cool city hall, so I'm just going to use City Hall as the center of my template, just so I have a place to put it. And just like any other project, I'm going to just click set site boundary to save. Since the site area is not super important for me to measure in a template, I'm just going to draw it manually. And then I'm going to click Save Project and give this project a name. Now, what I always like to do in my templates is include the word template in the name of the project. You don't have to do this, but I think it helps people in your workspace, if you're sharing it with them, understand that it's a template and not a real project. And it helps you kind of filter it out of your portfolio. If you're doing some like portfolio wide analysis, you don't want that template in there like gumming up your analytics. So it makes it a lot easier if you name them kind of consistently. So what I'm going to do is name this Philadelphia template. And then that's going to be really easy for me to know later on what the intention of this project is. I'm going to just click Save Project. And it's going to dump me into that project just like any other Giraffe new project that we've started. All right. Now that we have the basis of this project set up, let's talk a little bit about what templates contain. So when you start up a new project from a template, it's going to inherit from that template your data layers, your drawing layers, and your layer state, meaning the visibility or opacity of each of those layers and whether they're inside of layer groups. So you can see from that Giraffe blank template that I brought in, we have this base map layer. And that base map layer has a lot of layers included inside of it. Things like our landmark buildings, which are these beautiful, more detailed modeled buildings, our trees, and then it has things like transit labels, points of interest labels, map labels. All of those things are set at full opacity and visible by default. But maybe for my my personal template that I'm using in my workspace, maybe I don't want this trees layer to be included. So I'm just going to remove it from the project. I don't want the trees. And maybe I want to have like all of my labels included, but I don't want them visible by default. So I'm just going to turn off those labels. And then I'm just going to save that label, that visibility. So now when someone, if someone were to use this project as a template, it's going to inherit that exact appearance that I have set here. In addition, I want a few more data layers to be included in my default template. So I'm going to click on my Add Data Layer button and just search for a few things here. Including my wetlands layer, my FEMA layer, and my contours. And doing a little bit of research ahead of time on what's useful for your team to have in their template project is a really good idea. So, you know, we're assuming here in this presentation that I've had a little meeting with my end users and I've said, okay, what do you need to have in your template? And they've said, here are the 3 most important data layers that we want to see in every single project. Let's add those. So I've gone through and added those to my template. What I'm also going to do is just adjust. I'm going to add the satellite to my base map. And then I'm going to turn all of these additional layers that I just added into a layer group as well and call it environmental. And then I'm just going to save that. So now I have those new layers that I added in, the base map, and I've got this default layer, which is actually my basic drawing layer. So every project in Giraffe comes with at least one drawing layer. What I always recommend in your templates is if your team has a specific layer structure that you want to use, you should set that up in your template as well. So one really popular one is having a couple of different layer groups for different scenarios. So for instance, you might have scenario 1 and then have another layer for scenario 2. And maybe those each of those scenarios actually have multiple layers within them. So maybe you have the scenario 2 landscape and the scenario 1 landscape. Of course, you're going to work with your team to determine what your layer structure should be, but this gives you an idea of a starting point. Giving my scenario 1, my scenario 2, and then I'm going to rename that default drawing layer to just maybe I'll call it infrastructure, and that would be included on every layer. All right, and then I'll make the scenario 1 the default, and everything has been saved here, so I know that when I go to open up this project, it will look just like this when I load it up. So that's the first thing, getting all of your data layers and all of your drawing layers and those visibilities set to match what you would like your default state to be. The next thing that's included in every template is all of your usages or your assumptions. So if you're used to drawing in Giraffe, you probably know that you can come up to your drawing toolbar and you'll see a collection of different types of building typologies, and also landscape and parking, and even land uses included in your, blank air quotes Giraffe template. A lot of these things may not be relevant to you. If you're an industrial developer, you don't need to be seeing community and, hotel typologies. All of that stuff is just extraneous and not useful. So just nuke it out of your template. Get rid of it so that it's not in the way of the things that are actually useful to you. You can do that by going into the usage editor here, and that's going to pop out over on the side. And the first thing you can do is, let's assume today that I am an industrial developer. I'm never going to need this residential usage in my template, so I'm just going to delete it. Click delete, confirm, and I can just go down through the list and delete everything that isn't useful to me. If I want to do this in a quicker way, I can also click on the table view for usages, and this will pop open this whole table of all of my usages, and then I can delete each of these in a row and see sort of everything all at once. Maybe I want commercial, but I don't want things like my commercial core or my community, and I'm just going to pop down this list and get rid of everything that I don't want. I'll keep core and corridor, but I don't want cycle path. Don't want anyone bicycling through my industrial development. And then let's just assume that I've gone through here and sort of deleted out everything that isn't useful to me. I'm just going to then close this and save my changes. And then I can, the next thing that I would want to do is then, with any remaining usages that I am going to use, I want to open up those usages in the usage editor and make sure that all of the assumptions that are saved in that usage actually match my company's assumptions. So I'm looking at this and it's saying that my industrial building has only an 85% cell efficiency, a 95% efficiency. Maybe my cell efficiency, maybe my industrial warehouse is super efficient, and I actually want to assume that it's 90% efficient. Maybe I want my floor to floor height to actually be 30 feet. And maybe I actually think, oops, this is only accounting for less than one parking spot per 1,000 square feet. Actually, I think it should be four. So going down through these numbers and making sure that it actually matches what your real costs are is really important. Because, again, you don't want the software making those very important decisions for you. You want it to calculate based on your company's assumptions and your knowledge and what you know is accurate in your markets. So go through and make sure that everything is correct to what your assumptions are. So I would just run through all of that in all of my different usages that I'm going to use. Maybe I want to do the same thing in warehouse. Maybe for warehouse, it's a little bit less efficient, but maybe it's a little bit shorter. And maybe my hard cost is a little bit more for a warehouse. So I've updated those assumptions there. Once I'm happy with all of those, that is also going to be included when you start a new project from that template. So definitely making sure you run through all of those is a really good thing to do. Now that we have all of our usages set, we probably want to set up some custom calculations as well. So I'm just going to throw down a couple of buildings here just so that we can build out our calculations. Of course, as usual, our urban tab is doing a great job of calculating out everything for us and making sure everything looks good. But maybe I have some custom analytics set up that I want to include. So I'm going to go into my analytics tab, and I might have these imported in another project. So I'm going to start with my, maybe I'll just call it costs. I'm going to create that category. And then I'm going to import from another project. And I've got, I think I have an industrial, oh, not in this workspace. Okay, I'll just use my analytics imperial template here. And looking through my previously used analytics, I can import anything that might be useful. You can also build your own custom analytics template right inside of your Giraffe template so that it gets used by anyone moving forward. We have another webinar where I go through how to build out a pro forma. So if you're interested in exactly how to build out all of your calculations and all of the inner workings of analytics, definitely register for that webinar. It's called Pro Formas and Custom Calculations. That'll get you started with that. But today I'm just going to show you that all of these calculations will be saved in your template and then can be reused by you and your coworkers. So I'm going to import those calculations. And now I have my my template here that is doing some quick costing based on what I have drawn, and some additional things like density and impact. All of these things were just included in that random template that I just imported. So may or may not be relevant to your exact use case, but you get the idea there that those things will be included. So now what I've done so far is set up my layers, set up my usages, and set up my analytics. There's a couple more things that get saved into a template. One of those things is which apps are visible. So by default in every Giraffe project, when you start up, you get your urban and analytics, you get solar, and you get terrain. But there's, depending on what you've purchased and what's currently available for free in the Giraffe App Store, there's a lot of other options that you could add as well. One of my favorite ones to add to every project is the Builder app. And another really useful one is the Joiner app. So for my team specifically, I think that Builder, which is our report builder, is really useful. So you can build out a report template in here using your views and your analytics and even some custom text, and they can reuse that on each project. And then the Joiner app is just a cool add-on that lets you combine multiple geospatial layers into a new layer. So just assuming for my specific team that I'm building this template for, that Joiner app is useful to them. But you'll see when we start up a new project, those things are included as well. And then the last things that are included with every template are your project settings in your system settings. So things like your project units, your currency symbol, your acronyms, and even your base map style. All of those things are saved into your template. And also your CRS, which is your projection. By default, the Giraffe projects are just your, WSG84 typical, global projection. But if you have a local projection that you want to use on every project, you can import that as well. So this is really good to set up if you have like a really specific internal acronyms that you want to track. Or, oops, I set up this project in feet, but actually I meant it to be in meters. So you can switch all of that around and it will be saved in your template. And then yes, so those are all of the things that are saved into your template. So again, to review, it's your layers, it's your usages and all of the assumptions saved in those usages. It's your analytics and it's your sort of project settings like your units and abbreviations and your map style and your CRS, your projection. Some things that aren't saved in your template when you're using it as a template are geometries. So these geometries that I've placed down and my project boundary will not be imported when I create a new project from this template. We'll see that in a moment. If you do want to reuse your geometries from a project, that's when we use the design library. And again, not to be a shill, but we have another webinar series on the design library that's really great. That sort of teaches you how to build out some, custom template, like building templates and how to reuse those from project to project. But for a template project, any geometries drawn in that project will not be imported into your new blank project. Your sharing and permissions of the project does not come with the template when you create a new project from it, which is good because you might want the template shared with your whole workspace, but you probably don't want every single new project created shared with your whole workspace. So it helps you keep that a little bit granular. Your workspace property values. So in your workspace, if you have properties set up, like all of these custom fields that are set up in this workspace, the values of those fields will not be saved to your template. Whenever you start a new project, it will have the workspace defaults of those values saved rather than anything that you might have saved in the template. So that's important to note. And then the last thing that is not included in templates when you start a new project is views. So maybe I created a new view like this, just called it my default view. That is useful within each individual project. But when you create a new project from your template, views aren't taken with it. It's assuming that you're going to create new views in your next project that you create from the template. So hopefully that helps clarify some of those things. So included is your layers, your usages, your analytics, and your project settings, but not included are geometry, sharing, workspace property values, or views. Awesome. Well, now that we have this template set up, let's actually use it, right? So I'm going to actually turn this template into a template. So right now, before I've nominated this project to actually be a template by clicking over this checkbox, It's just a Giraffe project. It won't show up in my new project list to use as a template until I do this step. So I'm going to click into project settings. It's the little gear icon here. And then I have this use as template button. And in this use as template button, I have the option to share this template just for me, to share it with my teams. So maybe I want the Giraffe USA team to have this, or I can make it a template for the entire workspace that I'm in. So each of these options, you could check all of them, or you could check just one, like maybe I just want it to be for the Giraffe USA team, or maybe I just want it to be for the entire workspace. Once I check those check boxes, it's immediately saved as a template for those people. And I can just X out of this. So now that I've got this Philadelphia template set up, it will show up as a template when I go to create a new project. The one last thing that you have to remember to do, though, is even though I've set it as a template for my entire workspace, if someone in the workspace doesn't have access to this project, they won't see it. We've got to make sure that we give those permissions to that person. So I'm going to make sure that someone else in my project, in my workspace, has access to this. So I'm actually going to just share this with my colleague James. But I'm just going to give him view access, because I want him to be able to use this as a template, but I don't want him coming into this template and editing anything. I want to be the person in control of that. So I'm giving him access to view it, but I don't want him to have edit or admin rights. Just, he can look at it, but he can't change it, right? So now that I've saved that, and I'm going to go back to my sort of home screen here, and I'm going to start a new project. So I am going to turn on my parcel layer here, and I'm just going to use that parcel layer to create a new project. So I'm going to click create new project, and then I'm going to click apply template from here, and we'll see my Philadelphia template that I just created is now an option for me to select. So I'll just click on that. It's going to load up my template data to my project, and then I can just save that. So I click save, it's loading in, and now I can just go to that project, and let's confirm that everything actually came in, right? So let's see. Yep. So what it's done is it's brought in, actually, I must have clicked too quickly because it did not apply that template correctly. So let's try this again. I'm going to click new project and select the Philadelphia template. There we go. I must have just clicked save before it had fully loaded. So now we can see, yes, definitely this has inherited that template. It has my scenarios, it has my base map, and it has my environmental. And then I can also see that it has all of the analytics that I set up. And whoops, not my flow editor. And it should have, oh, you know what I did? When I imported the analytics, I said to overwrite the usages. So it overwrote all of that work that I did. So don't be like me. Don't overwrite your usages. But it will, so my template has all of those usages as well. But it will inherit whichever usages you have saved into that template. Once you have that template set up, anytime someone uses it to create a new project, it will inherit that template's current state into that new project. If you go back and say, okay, I want to make some changes to this template, any projects created before you make those changes won't change. It won't inherit those changes you've made to that template. But any new projects that you create after you make those changes will inherit those new changes. So let's come in here and do things like delete all of these ones that I had deleted before and accidentally overwrote and brought back in. Get rid of balcony. I'm gonna go back down to my warehouse and make this the same changes I had made before. Save that. And then now we can create another new project from this Philadelphia template, and we'll see those changes updated. So now we see those updated usages. We've got the 25, the 500, and the 2 parking spaces per 100 square feet. So there you go. That's sort of the long and short of how to create a template, what's included in that template when you create it, and then how to distribute that template to your team. So opening up the floor now for any questions. Happy to hang around for a little bit, answer questions either in the chat or live if you want to raise your hand. If not, thank you very much for joining us. And if you want to share this recording with your coworkers, we will be uploading it to YouTube shortly. So definitely check that out there. And I also hope I'll see you all in one of our next webinars. We run a lot of webinars on different topics. From our next one next week is on spatial data, so how to upload all of those different local layers. We run one on generative design. We run weekly a Giraffe 101 for brand new people. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely check out our event schedule on our knowledge base. With that, I'm going to turn off the recording, and if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question live, you can feel free. So thanks for joining us, and talk soon.